Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Stuck in the Middle, Strategies for Turbocharging Your Funnel. I'm Carol Kroll, Editor-in-Chief of Demand Gen Report, and I'll be your moderator for this presentation. Today's webinar is going to shed light on where the middle of the funnel sits in the sales cycle and some common middle of the funnel roadblocks, as well as how to break through them. So this session is part of our two-week-long Lead Lifecycle series, where we're covering a variety of trends, challenges, and strategies to help B2B organizations accelerate their funnel from top to bottom. Each session addresses a specific funnel stage: top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. And they'll include actionable insights for moving prospects and customers through the buyer journey. Previous sessions this week covered topics such as optimizing email campaigns, how to align sales and marketing to maximize conversions, and taking back control of your funnel with an ABM strategy. But there's lots more. If you've missed any of the sessions so far, or would like to sign up for sessions for later this week or next week, please be sure to check out the on-demand recordings for each session, all of which can be found at the link you see here on the screen. And please, we'd love to have you follow along and share your thoughts and feedback during today's webinar on social media. You can use the hashtag LLS16. You can also connect with us at Demand Gen Report at DG_report or myself at Carol Kroll, as well as our featured speakers, Bonnie Crater and Joe Galata, at their respective Twitter handles you see on the screen now. For those of you who may be new to Demand Gen Report, here's just a quick overview. We're an online media company publishing daily news, a weekly email newsletter, special reports, original research, and a rich menu of additional resources. In addition, we produce the annual Content to Conversion and Demand Gen Summit live event, and if you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to join more than 40,000 subscribers to our weekly newsletter by subscribing to Demand Gen Report today. For today's presentation, we're using the On24 platform. During the presentation, you can access all the information you need right from the platform toolbar. We encourage you to ask our presenters questions. To do so, simply click the Q&A widget in the upper right-hand corner, and we'll do our best to get to all of your questions during the Q&A segment at the end of the session. Our speakers also have team members standing by to field additional questions throughout the Q&A, and if we don't have a chance to get to yours, our speakers will be sure to follow up with you directly right after the webinar. Today's session is being recorded, and all attendees will receive an archive link to the presentation, so you can go back and review that or share it with your colleagues. And before I introduce our featured speakers, just one last housekeeping note. Today's presentation is slated to run about 20 to 30 minutes, with 10 minutes for Q&A following the presentation. So be sure to submit your questions using the Q&A widget in the On24 console. You can do so throughout the presentation. And now I'm pleased to introduce our featured speakers for today's session. Bonnie Crater is President and CEO of Full Circle Insights. Prior to Full Circle, she was a 5-time VP of Marketing at several Silicon Valley software companies. She held Vice President and Senior VP roles at Genesys, Netscape, Network Computer, Salesforce, Stratify, Realization, and Voice Objects. She's also a 10-year veteran of Oracle and its various subsidiaries. And Bonnie was named one of the 100 most influential women by the Silicon Valley Business Journal and one of 20 women to watch by the Sales Lead Management Association. And she's joined today by Joe Galata, Head of Global Revenue Operations at Vidyard. Joe leads the revenue operations teams at Vidyard. His team is responsible for feeding the revenue engine with early-stage demand and qualified leads. He also writes the Revenue Engineer blog, and he tweets from @RevenueEngineer. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to Bonnie and to Joe.
Carol, thank you so much. It's great to be here. I get to talk about my favorite topic, which is funnel metrics. I also like campaign attribution, but funnel metrics is my is one of my favorite all-time topics. As a former VP of marketing, I always wanted to measure my marketing, and was really excited when we started Full Circle so that we could have our friends who are also marketers actually measure the impact of their marketing on the business, so on pipeline and revenue. This particular topic today is of particular interest to me because a lot of times when you're in marketing, it's pretty easy to figure out what's going on at the top of the funnel or what's going on at the bottom, what the sales guys are doing at the bottom of the funnel. But the middle is a little bit fuzzy. And so that's actually why we build our tools at Full Circle, is to help folks understand what's going on, not just at the top and the bottom, but to be able to connect all of that information together and really understand what happens when you pass those leads off to sales. Okay, so in this particular presentation, we're going to first define what is the middle of the funnel, because a lot of people may find different definitions. So we'll have a kind of a working definition for this presentation. We'll explain kind of how that fits into the overall marketing and sales cycle. We'll identify the common problems and really how to get some breakthrough solutions to fix those. And then I'm really excited. Joe Galato's here, and he has had a lot of success at his company, Vidyard, which is a super hot company. He'll tell you a little bit about that. And they have some really great insights about how they have identified issues and solved problems in the middle of the funnel to generate fantastic business success. So let's start with what is the middle of the funnel. So I love to start off with Serious Decisions. Serious Decisions, of course, is the company that has established best practices for B2B marketers. And quite some time ago, actually this is a pretty old diagram. They actually have a version 2, but I like this first version because it's nice and simple. And they define what they call the demand waterfall. We call it the funnel, but it's the same thing. And there are these 5 stages. A lot of you guys have seen this before, so I won't belabor this, but it starts off with inquiry, and then these are responses to campaigns, and then those inbound leads are qualified by the marketing department. Then the leads are passed to sales and are hopefully accepted by sales. Then those are further qualified by sales, and then hopefully the business is closed won. And you see it's a funnel, so of course not every inquiry turns into business. So you have this natural declining numbers of responses that turn into business. Okay, so that's the basic funnel. All right, so let's divide the funnel into the top, middle, and bottom. Okay, so we've done a nice overlay here, and you'll see that there's one of the things that we've done is we've put an overlay to describe the different groups that are actually acting on the funnel. And in this particular case, we've got 3 groups. So you have the marketing team, and then you've got the sales team, but oftentimes the sales team has 2 groups in it. One we'll call the SDR, or Sales Development Rep group. If you are a Serious Decisions follower, they often refer to this as telesales, telemarketing, tele something or other. In this presentation, we'll call these sales development reps. And then there's a third group, of course, who are your account executives. Now, the different groups have different roles, right? Marketing is teeing up leads and teeing up what they perceive to be qualified leads. The SDRs, or sales development reps, are further qualifying the leads. And then oftentimes they're setting demos or appointments, and then the account reps, of course, are executing on those appointments and demos. Okay, so not every company, of course, has a kind of a two-tier sales department. Some companies, of course, just have one, and so for those of you that have just one type of sales rep, you can just combine basically the sales team is doing both the STR and AE role. Okay, so the top of the funnel we define for this presentation is inquiries and most of the MQL stage activities, which is, responses have come in, and then the marketing team has either used scoring or some other technique to determine that the lead is qualified. Then it starts with the handoff from marketing to the SDRs. Now, the SDRs are typically doing those activities to accept the leads and typically set demos and appointments, and then there's a handoff from the SDRs to the AEs. So at the end of that handoff, right, when the AEs are receiving the leads, that's the end of the middle, and then that becomes the bottom of the funnel, which is sales qualified lead and close one. So that's the activity of the sales team, purely to engage the customer, further qualify the customer, propose a solution, negotiate a deal, and hopefully close the deal. All right, so that is the middle of the funnel defined. All right, so just to talk about this a little bit further, what happens in the middle, just to quickly review, there's the marketing and sales handoff, there's the activities in the middle, and then there's the SDR-to-AE handoff. And the marketing team is passing those leads, typically in an automated fashion, to the SDRs. And then marketing is also oftentimes running programs in this middle of the funnel that work to accelerate the qualification of the leads, help educate the customer even further. Typical activities in that phase might be like a lunch and learn, or and some sort of event where it allows interaction between the sales team and the SDRs with the prospects. Then what the sales team, of course, is doing during this period is they are engaging and qualifying the leads. They're typically setting appointments or demos for the AEs, and then, of course, the SDRs are handing off the leads to the AEs. Okay. Now, so why is this middle very important? Okay. First, I want to take one step back and say there's really two types of metrics for marketers that are really important. One are funnel metrics, which we're talking about here, but there's also this notion of campaign attribution. And campaign attribution is really good for helping companies and marketers understand the impact of marketing programs on revenue. So you can helps you prioritize your budget and so forth based on the impact of the campaigns on revenues. This other thing that we're talking about here are funnel metrics, and funnel metrics is largely, not all, but largely about process. How do you make your sales and marketing processes better? How do you meet your revenue goals? And those kinds of activities, and that's what we're talking about in terms of funnel metrics. So the middle of the funnel is really important because at this point in time, the prospect has indicated a buying interest, right? They have maybe responded to several campaigns. They have engaged in a conversation. And so usually the first conversation that your sales team has a chance to speak with a customer. And that's a really important conversation because the prospect may have individual challenges and questions, and it's an opportunity for the company to show its stuff, right? And say, hey, yeah, we can help you solve that problem by doing X. And then the second really important thing is it helps set the tone, right? It sets that narrative against competitors. So you can set the bar high that a competitor has to jump over and really set the agenda in terms of a competitive sales situation. But the problem is that because there's so many groups, right? There's marketing and the SDRs and the AEs, and there's all these handoffs going on. There are some vulnerabilities, and balls can be dropped, and it's hard to oftentimes, if you don't have the right tools, to figure out what's going on. So let's move on and talk a little bit about the common trouble spots in the middle. And here they are, the common problem areas in the middle. So we're going to talk about three of these. There's the marketing and sales handoff. There's the SDR-to-AE handoff. And then there's this whole thing that happens in the middle. Maybe the it seems like the SDRs are taking a heck of a long time to get from one place to the next and try to figure out what's going on there. I'm going to tackle this first problem, which is the marketing to sales handoff. And the next couple of slides are going to have this format where there's a chart on the left potential problem, potential fix. And the chart on the left is designed to talk about the first problem. I mean, we could have had 3 charts, but that was too many to fit on the slide, so we're just going to have one chart to talk about the first problem. Okay, so let's talk about the chart. This is a lead volume chart, and you can see the y-axis goes from 0 to 6,000, and you can see that there's a gray bar and there's red bars. The gray bars is the lead target. And this could be a chart for a whole year, it could be a chart for a month, it could be a chart for a quarter, but some time frame. And the targets, of course, have been set ahead of time, and then there's a red bar, which is the actual. So the thing that's highlighted here is that the number of MQLs is set at 5,000, but it looks like only 2,500 MQLs have been created for the company, and so the marketing team is off the number, right? And that's while the conversion rates, it looks like they're doing fine. The conversion rates are, and this is conversion rate from stage to stage, but you can see that the numbers are off at SAL and SQL and closed won stages. So everything is off just because, one, there's not enough leads. So that was the potential first problem, right? Not getting enough leads for marketing. And so what do you do, right? So these are problems that many companies face all the time. So one approach is to invest more in campaigns that actually drive more leads, so you can get your numbers up. Okay. Second potential problem in the marketing sales handoff is that sadly their marketing is passing off lower quality leads. So we all know that we've run programs where we've generated a lot of leads, and darn it, none of those leads actually converted to business. That's really a shame. But we've all done it before, and so there are programs that we accidentally run which actually generate low quality leads, and this happens from time to time. So the most important thing is to look at that and say, okay, that's a shame, and we're going to try not to do that the next time. So what we're going to do is we're going to invest more in campaigns that result in closed sales, and we're going to divest from the ones that are just generating leads but not leading to any closed business. Okay, so then the third problem is too many leads. Now, most companies don't have this problem, but some companies actually do. Particularly companies where there's, the free download and everyone's gone crazy, everyone being, prospects are going crazy doing this free download. And then you have this whole needle in a haystack problem where you are looking for the right, a lead that potentially could actually close business because most of it's actually junk. And so when you have that problem, that is a great time to implement lead scoring, so you can slow down that flow of leads to the SDRs. But you also might have a problem. You need to look to see if maybe you need more SDRs, because if the leads are actually good leads, right? You really want those SDRs to follow up on them. So you might not have enough SDRs, and they may be just swamped and they can't keep up. Okay, second area. All right, again, chart on the left, lead volume by stage, 0 to 6,000. In this case, you look at the MQLs, the MQL target is being met. So 5,000 MQLs is the target, 5,000 actual. Okay, but let's look at what's going on further down the line. In terms of SALs, sales accepted leads, again, it looks like it's going to plan, right? You got the same actual, same target. But then if you look at SQLs, the number of leads that are ending up in the hands of the AEs is much lower, and thus is causing a problem. So it looks here from this chart here that the AEs are actually starved for demo appointments or first calls or whatever the appointment is that the SDRs are setting. And so, of course, the potential fix is, one of them, of course, is, okay, well, maybe the SDRs or AEs need to start some sort of outbound calling campaign. Another problem that this might be is that the SDRs are simply setting low-quality demo appointments. And this happens from time to time, especially if you have a whole bunch of new SDRs who are not skilled at actually qualifying the customers, and they're actually setting some pretty bad appointments that don't turn into anything. So SDR training and alignment around the leads is a really good thing. Then marketing actually can participate in this as well. Marketing can assist with sales enablement programs with some of this training, but also sales acceleration programs that are designed to engage the SDRs with and AEs even with the prospects, and some of those communications can really enhance the sales cycle. Third is too many appointments from the AEs. Okay, so again, a rare problem, but it does happen from time to time where you have SDRs being super successful at setting appointments, and I've seen this a couple of times where the company just needs to hire more, more AEs just to handle the volume. Okay, let's look at problem area number 3, and this is what happens between those handoffs. So you can see the little icon in the upper left-hand corner. So that's the middle, really the middle of the funnel where the SDRs really have the ball. And I'm going to start on the chart again on the left-hand side, which is basically showing the effect of longer elapsed time in terms of follow-up, right, and the effect on the conversion rate. So you see that red line there starts off at 42% and ends up at 16%. And then you see the blue bars. So the 42% red starting line is the conversion rate. And you can see it's going down. And then you can see that the number of leads and the time it takes for lead follow-up is actually going up. So this chart shows that the ones that have the 43% of the MQLs in the 360 minutes or more have the absolute lowest conversion rate. So the moral of the story, of course, is the faster you follow up, and we've seen this many times over and over again. The faster you follow up, meaning the faster the SDRs are able to follow up, the higher the conversion rate. And so potential problem number 1, of course, is that the SDRs are simply not following up on the leads fast enough. And so this is a pretty easy fix once you're aware of the problem. You have to have a good tool that makes you aware of the problem. But you can implement an SLA and then really just monitor it and just make folks aware. Usually, human behavior is that once you actually are showing charts in meetings and are just simply making folks aware of what their behavior is and how that's impacting the business, they usually change. It's really interesting. Even just the visibility of knowing what's going on really is a fantastic way to change behavior. There are some other factors or other potential problems. One is your sales cycle just might be lengthening due to things that are completely out of your control, macroeconomic factors. Maybe you're selling to a particular industry which is having a hard time. So this is an area of potential fix where you can just reconsider your target segments and focus on some other areas where maybe another industry is having an easier time during a particular time period. The other thing you can do is create incentive offers, and the incentives could be internal things, internal incentives for your SDRs or sales teams, or external offers for your prospects. After all, sometimes these kinds of incentive offers can really break the logjam that's happening in the follow-up, and we've seen that many times. And it could be something that you do internally, focus internally or externally. After all, the purpose of marketing is to make your products easier to sell, but also easier to buy. So sometimes these incentive offers can really make a big difference. And then another potential problem is that the SDRs are simply at capacity, meaning that they're getting so many leads they just don't have time to follow up on all of them. And in that case, you could try slowing down the number of leads that go to the SDRs. But the other thing, of course, is that you might need to hire more SDRs, and so that you just have simply enough bandwidth to do all the activities that's required by that team. So what we're talking about here in general is this notion of aligning sales and marketing. And the first thing is making sure that you have the visibility that you need in order to actually understand what's going on in your organization. Make sure you have a system that actually can help you understand what's going on in the middle of the funnel. Because once you have that, then you can work with the team to create that organizational discipline and solve the problems that are cropping up from time to time. It's amazing if you have a regular meeting and you flash up a chart that everybody can see. It really shines a light on things that are going well, but sometimes things that are not going so well. And it really helps marketing and sales work together if they have good data, that it's common data. And we, of course, recommend that you put all of this data into Salesforce because the salespeople see the same data as the marketing people. And so it creates that understanding across sales and marketing simply by displaying the information. You also can create a set of metrics, and not too many. This is very important. Don't set too many metrics because sometimes people go bananas on too many metrics. To set a couple of key metrics that help you diagnose issues. And then SLAs and incentives, that's also a great tool. Visibility, commitments for follow-up, monitoring what's going on, and try some incentives to kind of get some quick behavior changes. And then you want to just be in constant review because this is not a perfect science. And if you're able to review and refine, you can do a lot to actually change the face of your company. So, in summary, I think the key takeaways here are, get a good understanding of what's going on in the middle of the funnel. That can make an enormous impact on your company's business. If you get a good tool to so you can see all this information, and then flash those charts up because it can make a huge difference in behavior changes. You want to also focus on the core funnel metrics, which is volume, velocity, and conversion rates. And again, if you can set targets around those metrics on an annual basis, maybe on a quarterly basis, so that'll really help your team understand where they stand against goals, and really you can dig into the data and identify what the pitfalls are, and diagnose those quickly. And then lastly, I think I'm harped on this quite a bit, but it's really important that in order to create that organizational discipline, you got to flash up those charts in the meetings. And you don't have to spend tons of time on it, but flashing them up and making, what it does is it says, hey, we're following these metrics, and these are important to the company. And so having people in both sales and marketing looking at these charts on a regular basis, it's unbelievable how it can create sales alignment. Okay, I think that ends my portion, and I'm really pleased to introduce Joe Galata. Joe's with a company called Vidyard, fantastic company, where he's head of global revenue operations. And many of you out there may not have a revenue operations team, and I'm excited to have Joe here because he's not only innovated on various kinds of funnel metrics, but also in how to organize the operations portions of sales and marketing. So, Joe, why don't you take it away?
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Bonnie. Appreciate it, and appreciate you guys having me today. It's kind of funny listening to Bonnie talk about the theory behind the middle of the funnel, and then looking at the journey that we've gone through. And what we've experienced is exactly identical to the theory. There's really no departure or tweaking that we needed to do around the models. It's pretty much exactly as what she described and what you'd expect. So I'm going to talk about a couple different scenarios that we looked at and how we went through the transition to solve those problems. And also touch on the revenue operations organization, kind of what it is and why we have it and how it fits into this. Before I do, I'll just give a quick overview of Vidyard so you kind of have an idea of how we operate and where the funnel sits and what it does for us. So Vidyard is a video intelligence platform We run on a typical SaaS model. We founded about 2010, so now we're just over 150 employees, and a lot of that growth has come in the last couple of years, and really built on the back of just being smart about how we grow the organization, and really the dependency on metrics and a focus on revenue. So we're not just making emotional decisions. We're always going to the data and making sure that we have good, clean, usable data that we can make these decisions on. So like I said, the really big focus of our growth has been just efficiency, and using that intelligence to grow. So where Vidyard comes into play, we're a video intelligence platform. One of our main use cases is in marketing and sales. So got a couple really interesting stats from Think with Google, just about the buying process in general and where we plug into it. So right now, nearly half of all B2B researchers are millennials, which is probably no surprise. But I think the big takeaway there is that it's not just the C-suite that's doing the research and making decisions. So part of their research looked at kind of where these people were and how they influenced the decisions, and they found that 81% of non-C-suite employees actually have some influence on these purchasing decisions that are being made. So the power isn't really just sitting at the top anymore. It's really moving down. So as a marketer, you want to make sure that you're influencing those people who are influencing those decisions, and you're not just looking at the CEO and the CMO or whoever's at the top of the company, but you're talking to everybody. And the third interesting thing they found is that the majority of B2B researchers were doing this research and consuming information on mobile devices and through video, which is exactly where Vidyard comes in. As a video intelligence platform, we want to make it easy to get that video out there and then figure out how it's working so you can optimize that channel. So we have Vidyard internally. As a SaaS business, there's really four things that we care about. One is new business. Two is renewals, which is extremely important because it's tough to get new business, but in the SaaS model, you really need to make sure that you keep it and you have a high retention rate. And then third is upsells. So once you've got customers, make sure that they're happy and you can build out your product and go deeper into the organization and wider and whatnot. And what that really boils down to is a solid customer experience and just delivering really good value so that they can be successful. So number four is kind of a culmination of the first three, but we're really all about winning with experience, so delivering that top-notch white glove experience to all of our customers at every touch point, right from marketing to sales through to support and customer success. It's all got to be functioning at top efficiency and making sure that we're making our customers successful and keeping them happy. This is what the whole process looks like if you were to draw it out. So I don't think it's any surprise that marketing is involved in the entire process now. I think the top of funnel, marketing takes much more of an active role because people are engaging sales at a much later stage. And then obviously just as important with customers as we're trying to do renewals and upsells and whatnot, making sure that we're constantly communicating with them. And then sales plays the important role in the middle. Which is essentially what we're going to talk about today, where leads are being passed off to sales, worked by sales, and then eventually closing. And then we've got all the fun stuff at the back end. And that's, for a SaaS business especially, is just as important as the front because you're probably getting just as much revenue from upsells and renewals as you are from new business. So I think the key to all of this and kind of the reason the revenue operations group is here is because in order to keep all of this aligned around the customer and not your internal processes, you need a focus on operations across the whole journey. And we believe that to do that, you really need solid insights to be able to make those decisions. So this slide talks a little bit about revenue operations and why we have that team. So if you look back over time, despite the introduction of all these different organizations like sales ops and marketing ops and strategic bodies like a chief revenue officer and chief MarTech officers and things like that, there's always still been a gap between marketing and sales even sales and customer and marketing and things like that. So at the top level where you have those strategic leaders, they do a great job of setting the strategy and pushing it down. But that's not really solving the problem. And what we believe is that that gap is really caused by challenges at the executional level. So despite all the great strategy, when it comes to actually executing on that, that's where the alignment breaks down and people start to work in silos. And because of that, there's a ton of missed opportunity where companies could be tightening up those transition points and really making some huge gains. And in fact, Serious Decisions did a study and has a stat here that B2B organizations with tightly aligned marketing and sales groups achieve 24% faster revenue growth and 27% faster growth over a 3-year period. So, it's pretty clear by the research that if you are able to align your different groups properly, there's huge gains to be made. So to tackle this challenge, what we did is create the Revenue Operations Group, which is essentially a centrally managed operations group that functions right across the entire revenue group or go-to-market group. So we're looking at marketing, sales, customer experience. We work very closely with our product group and engineering group in many cases, and we try to align all those processes when we're actually building them. So ensuring that strategy seeps right down to the bottom of the organization. And you can almost think of it like an Oreo cookie, where the top of the cookie is the strategy, the middle of the cookie is the important stuff where all the business actually occurs, and then revenue operations sits at the bottom to hold it all together and make sure that all those business processes are sitting on top of a really, really solid operational structure. So we work in a circle in 4 main categories. So to start off, and kind of the main purpose of today's conversation is data and insights, making sure that we can look deep into our data, pull out really important insights, and then leverage that to get to the second box, which is solution development. Since we're able to identify opportunities and challenges, we can develop solutions around them. The RevOps group will do the implementation, so whether it's a process change or new technology, whatever that might be, they'll work directly with the business to implement that. And then ongoing governance of those systems and processes, and then training for the teams and whatnot. And then that feeds right back into data and insights, because we're going to take a look at how that process is working now if it's been changed, to make sure that it's optimized. So it's just this constant wheel of improvement. So taking a quick peek at our lead flow and what that process looks like, we've got stages that are almost identical to what Bonnie presented, I think, with the addition of the SQL stage, Sales Qualified Lead, Sales Qualified Opportunity. So we've kind of broken that into 2 stages. But essentially, we've got the top of the funnel with inquiries and MQLs where marketing functions, and then the middle of the funnel where the sales development team, they take those marketing leads and follow up on them. So that's one of the 2 channels we have at that stage. So they're taking what we would categorize as inbound leads and then qualifying them and then passing them to the AEs at the bottom of the funnel where they continue with them. Now we have a second channel called outbound or business development reps who source their own leads. So I guess the textbook example of this would be just pure sales-sourced business. In reality, at least in Vidyard, they are very, very closely aligned with marketing, and there's a ton of marketing support that we deliver to them just to make sure that they can do their job even better than if they were just out there on their own. But this is kind of where you get the marketing source versus sales source at this stage. So that's what our funnel and process flow looks like, and from here I'll kind of get into exactly what we look at within those stages and then the challenges we've identified and how we solve them. So this is a sample of what we look at on an ongoing basis. So some sample numbers around the chart that we would show everybody that Bonnie mentioned, making sure that these numbers are visible and constantly available. So on the left we've got the different funnel stages I just mentioned. And then first thing we look at is the conversion rate between stages. So we've got some long-term goals for these, and then we track the trends over time just to make sure that we're we're within the range we want to be, and also that if there's any of those numbers starts to move, we can identify that quickly. So if one starts to go up, why is that? And sometimes one thing I've learned is that increasing the conversion rate in many cases can be just as bad as a decrease in conversion rate. So one of the things we're trying to do is actually decrease some of our conversion rates earlier in the funnel, which means that people are later in the funnel are wasting less time on stuff that we know is not going to convert to business. So we've kind of got these long-term goals of where we want our funnel to be absolutely optimized, so that everyone is getting as much as they can out of what they're given and working at optimal efficiency. So those are conversion rates. Next up, we look at reach and volume. So this is just the volume of leads or opportunities at each stage, making sure that that's going to drive what we need to get to our goals. And then velocity, which Bonnie also mentioned, looking at how what time periods records are spending at each stage throughout the funnel, and then tracking if that's trending up or down, to making sure that's right in the range where we want it to be. And then the final column there is what we're able to do in terms of potential revenue at each stage. So we can look at, in this whatever time period this is looking at, we did $1.2 million in one business. At the same time period, we had $4 million in opportunities, in qualified opportunities, and that equated to $5 million in pre-qualified opportunities, and so on. So at any time, we can look at this and get a good idea for exactly what our pipeline looks at. Now, one of the key takeaways here is that this is an aggregate for maybe our entire business, but what we've been able to do with Full Circle Insights is dig a layer deeper than this. So not just look at that aggregate view, but really start to slice and dice it and figure out how things are working in different contexts. So as an example, one might be different regions. So we can look at North America versus South America versus EMEA and APAC and whatnot, and look at those in isolation and see how they're functioning. Or we could look at it based on certain target audiences or use cases and things like that. So essentially, any data point we have in our CRM, we can filter this view based on that and figure out, if all of a sudden we look at different industries and we find that the one industry is performing far better than another, we know we should go after that industry. And if one's poor, we either need to invest in it or stop wasting our time there. So the power of this data is just massive once you're able to use it and start slicing and dicing it, and you can really learn a lot from it. So I'm going to jump into some different cases that we've gone through with this, and some insights we've gathered and things we've been able to improve on. So there's two, and the first one is we wanted to improve our MQL to SAL conversion rate. So that's looking at all the leads that marketing has passed to sales, to the SDR team, and have them accept more of those and then push them through the funnel. So we approach this by looking at that conversion rate and then slicing and dicing on a bunch of different attributes to figure out if there was some reason why leads weren't being passed. So essentially we had a waterfall report out of Full Circle Insights that looked at that conversion rate, and then we were able to divide it by an attribute like what marketing automation platform is the customer using. So the chart on the right basically looks at of all the leads we got that used Pardot and all those that used HubSpot, Knockdown, and Marketo, and Eloqua. What was the conversion rate for each of those compared to people who were using something else or nothing or unknown? And that was kind of the golden nugget that we were able to look at. And when we looked at this, we were able to see that anybody using marketing automation was much more likely to be accepted by sales than anyone who was not, which makes complete sense for us because our product integrates with these different marketing automation platforms, and we can provide much more value to those people. So it makes sense that sales is accepting those over other ones. So that was the key insight that we gathered from that. But then we're armed with that information is to figure out what do we do with it. So there's two things we did. One is just to focus on marketing automation platforms as a campaign target. So we're able to kind of reformat the campaigns we were running to target that audience and really speak in the marketing automation platform language. So that helps that we were generating leads that were marketing automation users in the first place. And then the second one Second thing we did is change the weighting of our lead scoring program. So we were able to give leads with marketing automation a higher score so that they would get sent to sales faster than those that didn't. So those are the two things we changed, and the results were a big improvement in the MQL to SAL conversion rate. And then one of the other things that we didn't really expect was that the downstream conversion rates increased just as much. So that was a huge win for us. It wasn't, we solved one problem and also solved many others that we hadn't even intended to solve. So the chart you see on the right looks at the entire waterfall, right from MQL to SAL, and SAL to SQL, and SQL to SQO. And then the first column there is MQL to SQO, which is kind of an aggregate of the whole funnel. And you can see that anyone using marketing automation is significantly higher than those not. So it was a huge win right across the funnel from what was essentially a very simple exercise once we had that data in place and the ability to look at it. So it was a big win for us. So what we're going to do is kind of continue down the funnel and see what else we could fix using essentially the same methodology. So the next point for us was the SAL to SQL conversion. So what this is a sales accepted lead. So we know that an SDR is calling this lead and helping them better qualify those leads and then pass them on as a sales qualified lead over to the AEs to continue working. So this one, we're basically looking at what were the attributes within that follow-up period that led to higher conversion rates of those leads. So again, we're able to look at that, all the leads in that bucket, looked at what converted and what didn't, and then keep slicing and dicing until we found, what that magic variable was. And for us, the key insight was that the MQL to SAL rate, when the MQL to SAL rate occurred in under 60 minutes. So when the SDRs were following up with those leads in under 60 minutes, they were able to qualify far more leads than when they waited longer than an hour. So this is a visual representation of what that actually looks like. So on the horizontal x-axis, we've got time. So we've bucketed it into a 5-minute follow-up, 10-minute, 30-minute, and so on, all the way down. And then on the y-axis, we've got the actual conversion rate. And we wanted to give ourselves a benchmark. So what we did is we split this up between the SDRs and the BDRs. So the blue are the inbound leads, which are time sensitive. Somebody's filled out a form, they've requested a trial, something like that. Whereas the orange line on the bottom, which is the BDRs, the outbound, they really don't have any reliance on time. At least in theory, they shouldn't, because this is a sales rep looking for somebody to call. That person has not necessarily asked for anybody to call them. So there's really no event that's occurred that we need to wrap that follow-up around. Although if you do look at the numbers, you can see that reps seem to be maybe more enthusiastic right when they first create that lead versus when they wait a couple days to call them, because there's a slight increase in conversion rate when they call right after they created the lead. But that's probably a whole other webinar there. But looking at the blue line, we can very clearly see that leads that got a follow-up within 5 minutes had a 17% conversion rate, and then it just kind of continues to drop off there. And it's not a perfectly smooth line, which just goes to prove that this is actual real data and not just a made-up theory. But you can very clearly see that if you're following up within an hour, we're keeping conversion rates between 12 and 17%, and then beyond an hour, we're dropping from 11 down to 7%. So just a really powerful piece of proof around something that we always believed was the truth. So armed with that data, we're able to take some actions on that and change some things around. So one is that we now have a 1-hour SLA around follow-up on all marketing qualified leads. So we keep it to 1 hour for general leads. We have a high priority bucket, which is 5 minutes for the really juicy leads. And then beyond that, we've added some notifications. So if a lead does age over an hour, the reps get a notification that they have something that they need to follow up on, just in case something came up and they missed it for some reason. It doesn't sit too long. And then we've also, because we're a global company based out of North America, what we've done is start to schedule shifts around other geographies so that when those leads are coming in, we can get to that 1 hour SLA. So even if they come in at 8 o'clock at night, there's somebody working that lead for that time zone that they can follow up on. So those are the 3 changes we've made based on the data that we got. And the result of that was an increase in SQL conversion rates by almost 50%. So, it's a monstrous increase in conversion rates just by simply looking at the data, proving what the opportunity was, and then making some very simple changes to our model. So just to summarize, Vidyard obviously loves revenue. We love to be efficient, which is why we've built this whole revenue operations team, is to really keep all the different revenue-focused organizations aligned, dig into the data, look for those opportunities and look for those challenges, and then work with the business teams to actually fix and implement them. And really the core of all of that is for full circle for us. So having those deep insights into what that waterfall looks like for us, and being able to quickly identify when things are starting to come off the tracks, figure out what the problem is, and then implement those solutions without having to wait too long. And in many cases, we can solve the problem before it really starts. So to quote a famous Canadian, or paraphrase, we kind of started at the top with full circle, and now we're here. So we've always been very data-driven. We implemented full circle very early in our company's maturity, but it's really helped us grow into a hyper-growth company instead of just a high-growth company, just by being smart about the way we run our business. So with that, that wraps up my section, and I'll pass it back to Carol, and we can do some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Joe. I love money too, and I love dancing green robots. All kidding aside, great presentation and really impressive results, and thanks, Bonnie, for the front end of your presentation. So we've gotten a lot of great questions from attendees, so let's just get right to some of those right now. And the first one, Roger submitted the following question, and I think it's a good question for Joe. What else besides the prospects marketing automation systems did you consider in the MQL conversion, and how would you pick between the different attributes of the customers?
Yeah, unfortunately don't really have a good answer for that. For us, it was really just trying everything. So we tried things like, their region, their job level and title, and what CRM system they use, their industry, their company size, and revenue band, things like that. So our strategy was just to, because it's so easy to quickly slice and dice this data, we just looked at everything we could, and we were able to isolate, the really high impact variables. So marketing automation platform was kind of top of the list, but there was others. Industry played a major factor for us. Revenue did not, surprisingly. That was something that we always thought was the case. So it's kind of going the other way. We were able to identify a variable that we thought was important, but really was not. But it was really just about looking at everything that we had and trying to figure out what made the most sense for us. So really, when you're trying to pick what to look at, I would probably start with what you think it is, but don't exclude things that you're not thinking about. So just get a list of every attribute and start on that list until you've exhausted them all, and then you can start to rank them in priority. But yeah, definitely don't leave anything out just because you don't think it might be an important variable, because that's where the key insights are, is in that stuff that surprises you.
Right. Keep an open mind. The next question is from Christine, and this is a question for Bonnie, I think. For sales acceleration programs created by marketing, how does a company with many salespeople decide what types of programs or what segments to focus on?
Okay, I think this goes really back to really what Joe was saying, and it's really all about the data, right? And if you have a good tool, you can slice and dice the data, and you can actually see which programs are really driving revenue. You can see which programs are driving conversions, but also conversion overall to revenue, because ultimately that's what you're trying to get to. And So that's my advice: is get the data and really work through the data to find the ones that are driving revenue. And there's three metrics to look at. Which types of programs are driving the right volumes, which ones are driving the right conversion rates, and which are helping you accelerate your sales cycle by having higher velocity. And then you can take that data and you can slice and dice it by various segments. So you can slice and dice it by program type, or you can dice it by segment over different periods of time. Compare quarter over quarter, year over year, and you can really see how your marketing is doing, and make some really good decisions that way. I know that if I had this data, I would have been a much better marketer, and I really wish I had it.
Terrific. Here's another one for you, Bonnie. Colin is asking, how does a company determine how fast an SDR should follow up with a lead?
Well, I think this really goes back to Joe's chart. I don't know if you remember that chart in the presentation, but it was a terrific chart basically showing how long it was taking for the SDRs to follow up, and did it in 5, 10, 15-minute increments. And you could see very clearly that there's kind of a break-off, right, that less than an hour had considerably better results than on average than more than an hour. And so by getting that data, you can just you may have different results for your company, but that's what it looked like at Vidyard. But it probably looks a little different for your company. But the rule is faster the follow-up, the better the conversion rate, and we've seen that over and over again.
Terrific. Joe, another one for you. Amy is asking, why did your company specifically pick the MQL to SAL stage and the sales accepted lead to sales qualified lead stage to focus on? Did your company look at the top of the funnel or the bottom of the funnel as well?
Yeah, we look at everything. So the way we operate internally is that we have kind of these gigantic dashboards that look at the entire company. We look at them on I guess the managers would look at them on probably a daily basis, but as a management team, we look at them on a monthly basis, and we just keep track of what's outside of where we want things to be. So there might be 50 different things that we look at each month, and 48 of them happen to be within the range we want them, but then there's 2 that are not. So in this case, at that particular stage, those are the two metrics that weren't where we wanted them to be. So that's why we set out on an effort to correct them. And it varies from month to month. So, the month after that might have been maybe our close rates, or, who knows, could be anything. But, we continually monitor the entire business, and, the entire funnel. And then as soon as something starts to look like it's a little bit wonky, then we just prioritize that and go after it.
Okay, great. So a lot more questions have filtered in, but I'm afraid I only have time for one more question. So just a reminder to attendees that your questions will be addressed if we're not addressing them here in the webcast. After the fact, we'll follow up with you and make sure we get all of your questions answered. But this last question goes to Joe again. William wants to know, at what point should a company bring in a revenue ops department? Any advice or feeling about when that stage is and when a company would be ready for bringing in a revenue ops team?
Yeah, I would say the sooner the better. For us, I've gone through this a couple times now, and both were implemented at kind of an almost early startup stage, really. So you're going to get to a point as a young company where you start to have to rely on data to make these decisions. I think having that organization in some form at that point is a good idea. Otherwise, you start to get in that siloed approach of trying to figure out what the problem is in marketing, what's the problem or the opportunity in sales, and whatnot, and you lose that holistic view. But with revenue operations, you're trying to build a whole company, so you really need to be able to prioritize across all those organizations. So, for us, I think we've kind of started the official revenue operations journey probably between our Series A and our Series B, and that's when we brought in Full Circle and whatnot. And actually, oddly enough, when we did our Series B, a lot of the data that we use to pitch investors came from Full Circle. So aside from increasing our revenue, it actually gave us the ability to be much more intelligent about our pitch to investors and help us get that round of funding. But I think that's the key point for us. And it was to start off, what we really did is start by just digging into the data. So that was kind of the start of it. And then from there, we brought in all the tools under that organization, and it just kind of grew out of that. So it was it wasn't like a day in our development that we decided to make that change. It was more of an organic thing where the team just kind of grew as different pieces made sense. And if you're a larger organization and you're kind of past that point already, it's never too late to make that switch. And you've probably already got marketing operations and sales operations and customer operations or whatever it might be. So bringing those together, can be a challenge, but I think if you start with pieces of it like the insights and whatnot, and then let it grow from there, at any size company, it makes sense, and you can definitely make that change.
That is great advice, and thank you so much to Bonnie Crater and Joe Galata for sharing such great insights, and thanks to all of our attendees for speaking with us and taking the time to join us today. A reminder, today's webinar will be available on demand, so you can access it at any time. And just one last note, please join us for our next session taking place today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with Content for Demand, MoFu, MoFu, MoFu. 3 ways to give the middle of your funnel more content love with Dana Harder from Content for Demand. And you can just follow the link that's shown right here to learn more about that session and many more sessions in the Lead Lifecycle Series 2016. We hope to see you there. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.